Justin Frenette here, co-founder and CEO of Him and Her, host of the Pre-Con Recon podcast, where we talk about all things brand and marketing in the pre-construction real estate market. I invite leaders to share their knowledge and strategies for success, powering our community to thrive now and in the future. This episode is brought to you by Him and Her, a creative agency specializing in exceptional branding for real estate and high-end consumer goods. Over the past 8 years, we've helped shape and sell over $2.5 billion in pre-construction real estate projects, crafting and executing strategies that deliver extraordinary results. From successful multi-year master plan mixed-use communities, high and low rise, to transforming underperforming locations into sought-after destinations, to selling out a residential tower in just 23 minutes, we empower our partners to find success in any market condition. If you're launching a pre-construction project and want to learn more, reach out to us at himandher.ca. I'd also like to give a shout out to Eric Kikuchi. Eric is our certified EOS implementer. EOS has transformed our business, and if you haven't heard of EOS or if you've been exploring it, make sure to reach out to Eric for a free 90-minute session. It's a framework that can help you run your business. You can connect with Eric on LinkedIn, and we'll put the link to his profile in the podcast description. My guest today is Alan Klippenstein. Alan is the Vice President of Real Estate Development at Schinkel Properties, which according to him basically means he gets paid to argue with cities, wrangle consultants, pretend he's not dead inside after the fifth quick call of the day that runs 90 minutes. He used to manage construction sites, real boots, real mud, real results. Now, he spends his time reviewing site plans that change more than a toddler's mood, attending council meetings where people say, with all due respect, before absolutely disrespecting you. He's all about building affordable communities and making damn sure there are enough toilets on site, because nothing kills morale faster than 12 guys laying asphalt in 30-degree heat while they use one blue box baking in the sun like a biohazard casserole. Give them a raw chunk of land, a stack of conflicting reports, and a prayer, and Alan will somehow deliver a livable, sellable community. Just don't make them sit through another public hearing unless there's caffeine and a promise that it won't turn into a 4-hour debate about boulevard trees. Alan, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, like I mentioned, that's probably not the LinkedIn descriptor, but it's more true to real life.
I love it because it's messy. This field isn't a wrapped up conveyor belt processing line where everything goes perfect.
Yeah,
now,
totally.
Before we dive in, I always love to ask my guests what it is they love about what they do.
You know what? I love working in real estate development. I find it's such a fun and rewarding place to be. I think it's, there's nothing that gives me more satisfaction than to drive through development that we put into the ground, and now you see families building homes, you see kids, riding their bikes on the streets or on the paths. Yeah, I love it. It's a cheesy answer, but I'm a cheesy guy, so I'm okay with that.
I like it. Now, your bio humorously mentions, your daily battles, and I'm sure there's many more that you could list. Wrangling consultants, navigating city council meetings. Can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today, managing sites in your current role?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's a perfect pathway to becoming a real estate developer or working in this field. I think there's a lot of different paths that people take to get here. Probably the most common are people that go to planning school or go to school for civil design or even finance. I think all of those things create a strong backbone to working in real estate development. For me, it was I went to school for accounting, worked in finance for a bunch of years and hated it. Just I couldn't stare at a spreadsheet every day. And so got into project management and worked as a project manager for a general contractor doing civil construction for about 10 years. And and then I found my way into my current role.
I love it. Now, with some hands-on construction background, what was the biggest surprise as you moved into the real estate development world? Was there something you had in your mind, a cliche you figured it was like, and it was totally different?
You know what? I thought moving into it that there would be a lot of similarities. You're still dealing with budgets, you're still dealing with trades and consultants and inspectors. Um, and being a project manager, the core principle kind of in project management is to find solutions. Um, that said, I also found it to be incredibly different. Um, in construction, when you build a building, you pull a building permit, you check the boxes, you submit the application, and wait a little bit of time, and you get your building permit, and you can build your building. Uh, in real estate development, it's the same. There's an application, you check the boxes, you fill it in. Oh, but wait, now you have a public hearing that you have to go to, right? And it doesn't matter if you've checked all the boxes. It doesn't matter if you're doing exactly what the zoning code tells you to do.
Mm.
It's incredibly political, and I think that's something that I wasn't, naively wasn't aware of, and I found that to be by far the biggest challenge is how to navigate the politics of that.
Okay. And I'm sure it's different everywhere, the nuances of that, and that's what we've seen as well. Now, taking a project from raw land to a thriving community, when you have to deal with some of those challenges and politics and nuances, what do you find most rewarding? What keeps you getting up out of bed and fighting those battles and solving those problems?
Yeah, I love it. Like I truly enjoy this job in this industry. There's a need for housing in the market, and I get to be a part of that solution. So knowing that I can do that, yeah, it gets me out of bed in the morning. And like I mentioned before, like I love seeing us go from land acquisition through building and construction to the end point where you see families enjoying their space. Uh,
Yeah.
so that really gets me excited and makes it easy to come into work.
Yeah, the biggest eye opener when we got into the field 9-ish years ago was that some of these projects have been going on for so long. Like we have some clients where like it's year 18 and now we're just talking about launching it in the next couple of years. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that's like somebody's whole career of trying to
yeah.
bring one project to life. Some go faster, obviously, but to think about the scale of some of these, we're in such a quick, fast-paced, one-and-done world. But developers are driving these things forward, looking so far into the future. I find that fascinating.
No,
Recent
absolutely.
Is there a recent project completed or launching soon that you particularly are excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the fun things about my job is you're trying to fix problems in the market, right? And if there's a problem, that creates an opportunity. Um, and what we've been seeing lately, um, and CMHC will often talk about this kind of with the whole housing life cycle, is that there's a bit of a housing life cycle where you have a young person, they move into a smaller affordable home, and then they grow their family and they move into a larger home size for their family. Then as their family gets older and the kids move out, they move back to that smaller affordable home.
Yeah.
And what has been the challenge lately is that there hasn't been enough smaller affordable homes to keep that cycle going. And so people that were ready to downsize often wouldn't, because the cost of that smaller home is now far too expensive. So there wasn't much of uh, a financial incentive to downsize. So they stayed in their home, and thus there was less smaller homes or even family size homes for people to move into. So with that, it definitely created an opportunity in the market for us to look at affordable homes, or even look at transitional homes. So probably the project I'm most excited about right now, it's called Prairie Oaks. It's a adult only development, which is focused on affordability and community amenities, and we're able to achieve those by having modular homes with community spaces. So we've received really good feedback on that. We've had good uptick in the market for that. And it's really hitting a niche where people are looking to downsize from their affordable home. They want to live in community, and we're able to provide that. I think the other one, somewhat similar to that, is an apartment community, all bungalow style, which again is an adult-only community. But this one is focused on accessibility. So we have barrier-free entry with a lot of accessible features. But what's interesting about that, though, and even though these developments, both of those that I was referencing, they're geared towards, they're an adult only community, but they're geared towards 55 plus audience. Probably 40% of the people that live there are young adults.
Wow.
That are they want that lifestyle. They don't want to be. They want to live in community. They're not planning on having kids, and
Yep.
they. So I think that was something that surprised us. We didn't anticipate that when we started those projects, but it's turning out that there's a lot of people that are interested in that.
Okay.
So yeah, those are definitely the two projects I'm very excited about.
That's amazing. And sizing, like what size of projects would you say you're dealing with as a developer, unit count wise, phasing wise, for some context?
Yeah, it's funny. So in Manitoba we have a plethora of land. So our develops, we typically talk about how many acres.
Okay.
When I talk to developers in Toronto, it's how many stories, right? So
Yeah.
development means different things in different places.
That's amazing.
So I mean, often we're a lot of our subdivisions we kind of like around the 80-acre size.
Okay.
We can get about 200 single family houses in there, and a bunch of multifamily lots as well. So
Yep.
that's typically like a comfortable size that we like, and that would probably provide 4 or 5 phases, and the life cycle of that project is probably going to be from land acquisition through construction through the whole build out, probably around 10 years.
Okay. And are you seeing a lot of movement from other provinces, big cities to your region?
Yeah, I mean, Manitoba is definitely a more affordable market than a lot. Definitely during COVID, then there was a lot of people that moved out from major centers to Manitoba, and even from Winnipeg out to some of the smaller centers.
Yeah.
The unique thing about Manitoba is it's about as steady as it gets. You read every CMHC housing report, all the banks and everything. When you look at, there's almost no variability in our market. It's
Okay.
very steady. It doesn't have the big swings, but it also doesn't have the big dips.
Yep. That's awesome. Now you talked about, your approach to these smaller, more affordable homes, which starts to, hint to me that you guys are thinking differently about how you develop these communities. What else would you say differentiates you from the competitors in your area?
I think what differentiates us, and I mean, every developer is going to say this, but we try to be unique in our developments.
Okay.
I don't think that's a unique thing to say, right? Everybody wants to be unique. What I will say is that our developments have a particular style. We like to have curvy roads versus kind of the straight roads. And we like that and then with that, we also pull the houses back. Our setbacks from the road are quite a bit more than standard.
Okay.
And we do that because it gives an aesthetic of a more open neighborhood. When you're driving down the street, it doesn't feel kind of like a laneway.
Yeah.
And we like the curvy roads as well because it aesthetically looks nice, but it also slows traffic down. So it just creates we're going for a feel within the community, and we think we can achieve it through some of our civil design choices that we do.
That's amazing. I like your thought behind that. Now, in many markets, there's a major shift towards what we're calling secondary markets. That could be secondary geographically, that could be secondary products, a heavier push towards purpose-built rentals. What are you seeing trend-wise in your market, and how is that affecting what you're deciding to bring to market? You kind of touched on one right now, these smaller downsize opportunities. Are you seeing this shift to rentals, to moving out of the major metropolises?
Yeah, and I mean, funny enough, I would probably consider ourselves to be a secondary market developer.
Okay.
Being in Manitoba, Winnipeg is our major center, and we don't do a lot of development within Winnipeg, but
Yeah.
but we do a lot of development around the city of Winnipeg,
Okay.
and we've found a lot of success in doing that. Yeah, like I mentioned, during COVID, there definitely was a huge exodus from cities, or from even larger cities across Canada to smaller markets, and it happened to work out well that that's kind of where we were situated.
Mm.
With COVID kind of being over here now, that rush has slowed down, but there still are a lot of people that are looking to move out of the cities into these secondary markets. And a big reason for that is, a more relaxed lifestyle and affordability.
Yeah.
When you move into the secondary markets, then often you have more space. You have a larger lot. You might spend the same amount of money on a house, but you get much more house for your money.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of the markets that we operate in all the time. Yeah, we have, like I said, we're not in the city of Winnipeg, but we operate in 8 different municipalities around the city.
Okay.
So we're kind of everywhere where people are going to go.
I find work has evolved so much since the pandemic as well, and just the ability to work remote. In fact, we have employees all over the place, one in Nova Scotia, and that opens up the ability for people to move to maybe more affordable places and still work the job they want to work that may have forced them into the major cities.
Yeah, no, we saw a lot of that. I mean, we had, my neighbor, for example, moved from Victoria to Manitoba. Sold their tiny little house for I don't know, like $2 million in Victoria, right? And bought a dream home with a backyard pool, and now they're living the dream that they could never afford out here, and with the ability to work wherever they want. So
Yeah.
there's definitely advantages to moving to secondary markets, and with people being able to work more remotely, there's more opportunities for that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have some places I'd move on my list, but family, I love family, and I have a lot of family around me, so they keep me anchored.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
um, what unique, either way, challenges or opportunities do you have operating in those secondary markets that gives you the advantage or disadvantage to, let's say, the guys in Winnipeg?
Yeah, I think the advantage that we have is when you work in secondary markets, then it, it becomes a lot about communicating with the council and building these relationships with the different councils and even the different public works and development officers in these municipalities. And relationship building isn't something that you can do overnight.
Mhm.
So, like I said, we're in about 8 different municipalities. I spend a lot of time and a lot of evenings at council meetings, talking to council, trying to get them excited about our projects, um, and even just showing them that they can have faith in us, that we're a good developer, and we're going to do something that's going to benefit the community. So I think that I think that's a bit of a change from the primary markets, where you don't necessarily need to have those relationships as strong as you do in secondary markets. And part of that is just because in secondary markets, um, it is a smaller community, so they might not be used to as much development as in those big places. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to walk them through the process a little bit, or like I said, just establish that relationship.
Yeah. That makes sense. Now, looking forward a bit, are there anything compared to the last, 5, 10 years in how you designed products or amenities that you're doing differently in future focused projects?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the focus is affordability,
Okay.
and and that can be a dirty word. I've been told while pitching an affordable housing project that the community didn't want poor people there, and yet we're talking about people that are purchasing a home, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so there is a big misconception when you talk about affordability. Um, and we were actually able to get our project approved, but only when we stopped calling it affordable housing and we started calling it young professional housing. Now suddenly in their mind they're like, oh, this is where my kid is gonna buy a house.
Okay.
Same house, same site plan, same everything, just a different way to
Different word.
market this thing. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's definitely the challenge. It's hard to do affordable housing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of give that needs you need to give a lot to be able to make that happen.
Yeah.
Um, so that's definitely the challenge, but I think that's what is needed out there.
Okay. Now, I was going to ask, when developers from the big cities enter the secondary markets to compete with you, where do they struggle? It sounds like relationships on the councils. Is there anything else that you see you have the advantage of and that protects you from those seeing, hey, time for us to jump into the secondary market game?
Yeah, and we've definitely seen that. Like I mentioned during COVID, then there was kind of this mass exodus out of the cities, and then a lot of developers that were developing out there were starting to look into the communities that we were already in. Um, and yeah, a lot of them struggled, and a lot of them struggled because of relationship and just not fully understanding what they were getting into.
Mm,
These smaller communities, they typically have administration and staff that have less experience with development. uh, there might only be like one or two developers within those communities, and so everything runs at a different time scale.
yeah.
Where I think when you're in a larger city and you're dealing with a professional planner who's dealing with development agreements every single day, they know what they're doing. They're a professional. This is the one job that they do. In these secondary markets, the person that you're dealing with that does the development agreements might also be, you know, working as their planner and doing all these other things. So yeah, so the speed changes. The relationships matter. So I think that's definitely where we have seen other people struggle, is
Yeah.
just not anticipating one thing and getting something else.
That makes a lot of sense. What we also see typically they don't understand the lifestyle and they'll plunk a cookie cutter big city development and floor plans in a secondary market that doesn't make any sense in that market. Just the
Yeah,
way
and
that
we have a
life
good
is different.
example of that. There's a big developer in Winnipeg that, again, during COVID kind of picked up and moved to a secondary market, and basically took their Winnipeg style and dropped it in there, and nobody wanted it, right? Like the subdivision sat empty for several years with very slow uptick, because it was a much more compact subdivision, whereas people in that market were used to and wanted something a bit bigger.
Yeah.
So just because one thing works in one place doesn't mean that it works somewhere else. So I really think that people need to, when they move into a different market, even if it's not far away, like we're talking, 20 minutes out of Winnipeg, it's a different market and a different buyer with different needs.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about brand and marketing. As VP of Real Estate Development, how involved are you in team members like Steph or external agencies in the branding and marketing of some of these projects you're bringing to market?
Yeah, so Steph is our marketing manager in our company.
Okay.
Our company has three distinct divisions, with one of them being real estate development. We have two other ones that are different. So she manages the marketing for all of that.
Okay.
So when it comes to land development, our we'll work together on that. And when we bring a new project to life, then often we'll sit down and we'll talk about, what kind of feel we want to have for this. But she very much does her own thing. I mean, so I'm not overly involved on the day to day of that.
And is there any feedback? Because what we've seen is some developers have those conversations really early, which is great, and you get brand alignment on what gets built, and some have it very late. And a lot of the time there can be a major disconnect between the brand and what this building and community looks like and feels like. And so would you say you guys talk quite early in the process to make sure, the demographic, the feel? Because I've had projects where what they designed building wise looks like a retirement home, and the branding is a modern farmhouse aesthetic, and there was some changes needed to be made on the amenity and exterior base to get those two aligned. Where do you sit on that spectrum, early versus middle, late?
Yeah, we're probably we probably started our marketing pretty late on that spectrum.
Okay.
When we found that our best results come when we make a heavy marketing push when there's an actual road to drive down,
Okay.
or a building to see. And we have the luxury to be able to do that because we're private equity firm, so
Okay.
we can self finance our projects. So we don't need to have pre sales in order to launch a project.
Yep.
If we did, then we would have to do heavy marketing at the beginning. But because we can self finance, then typically we'll wait till the project is 80-90% constructed, and then we'll make a strong marketing push. So that gives us some advantage in the fact that we're not misconstruing, or the communication is off, or the project changes through the course of construction. But it also does make you a little nervous as you get close to the end that, hey, let's hopefully that we have some buyers at the end of this thing.
Right. Yeah. Risks.
But so far, it seems to have worked.
On both sides. Yeah, I've seen very successful developers with your model. It seems to be the stronger foundation to be based on in many cases. So, okay. Now, if we talk about looking ahead, what trends in real estate development, let's say building materials, building technology, the buildings themselves, the product offering, anything, what trends are you seeing that are driving affordability or sustainability in communities? Where are you finding those savings or those efficiencies?
Yeah, the most trending thing, the most wanted product right now is affordable homes. And like I mentioned before, getting something affordable is quite difficult, and there's a lot of give to be able to do that. One is you have to have buy-in from the community to even greenlight the type of project, and then you have to find, because we're not a home building company, we then have to find partner builders that share that same dream with us.
Mm-hmm.
And everything has to work hand in hand. So we can't build a regular subdivision with regular town size lots and then hope a builder is going to build an affordable home on there. And they won't do that because the cost of the land is too much. So
Yeah.
in order to make the land more inexpensive, then you have to make the lot smaller. So there needs to be buy-in from the community for that to begin with. That, hey, we're going to bring these houses to market at an affordable rate, which then means that they're going to have a smaller yard to go with, right? And there takes a bit of buy-in for that, because some communities, some councils, they have a certain aesthetic that they want their community to have,
Okay.
and that's not always what they want. However, that's how you achieve affordability. And so we'll redesign lots, and we'll make them smaller, and then the builder will then build, as a result, to build a smaller house, which then comes with a smaller price tag. So that's one way to do it. The other thing that I would like to see more of would be more acceptance for modular homes.
Okay.
Modular homes are by far the most affordable way to get a house. And it does come with the most negative connotation. I think when you say modular communities, a lot of people think 70s trailer parks. works, right?
Or
And
shipping containers comes to mind.
totally, and that's not what it is anymore.
Yeah.
We have a modular community that is, we hired an architect and a designer, and the homes look beautiful with hardy board siding, and they look fantastic, and yet we can build them for significantly less than our affordable homes.
Right.
And these things are going on, pile foundations and connected to all your services, and
Yeah.
it's a great project, but it's incredibly hard to get that community buy-in to even greenlight the project.
Yeah, and some of those compromises have to be made because the vice is coming in on. There's only so many levers you can pull. We see it on the um, purpose-built rental side specifically. There's a client we've worked with, Stubbies, who has a new product called Fast Track, where they're doing precast rental buildings where it's just predetermined shapes and configurations of these units, so you can just drag and scale it to the size of property you have, and it optimizes how many units you get. So yes, is there some compromises in that? Yeah, but the affordability difference is just so much greater. So where's that balance?
Well, and it's quite simple, because if you don't have an affordable home, then you push that person that would purchase a home into renting.
Mhm.
And likely, once you become a renter, it's incredibly difficult to get out of that,
Mhm.
especially as your family continues to grow. So there needs to be that first entry point into the market. Otherwise, we're going to just create a nation of renters, and that's not good.
Yeah, I agree. Now, for somebody looking to get into real estate development, what would be your advice? I'm graduating college, maybe I'm in another related career like you were, project management, finance. How do I jump into this adventure?
Yeah, well, first you need a bucket of money because it's everything comes with an extra comma in terms of how much everything costs.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to know uh, is just the time scale.
Hmm.
Coming from a general contractor into this, we would a big project when you're building a building might be 2 years. A land development can be 15 years, right? And
Hmm.
it might take 3 years to get it approved from the time that you purchase the land.
Yeah.
So you have to have a lot of patience. You need to understand that your income is going to come on the last 10% of the lots that you sell. So you have to have a lot of patience, even financially, and the ability to withstand those change of markets. And when we're talking about a 10-year project, markets change, interest rates change like crazy.
Hmm.
So you have to be able to have the ability to withstand the challenges of that. So it's definitely not for everybody, but it's great when you're here.
Awesome. Now, you personally, how do you stay ahead in the industry, in your field, in your position? How are you keeping up to date, moving forward, like planning the future yourself personally?
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep a pulse on the market, and you need to keep tabs on that because it changes, and it changes constantly. I mean, I look back to 2019. 2019 was, the flavor there was moderately sized family homes. And then we enter 2020, which was COVID, and suddenly it was mega houses with 3-car garages, and cash is cheap, so let's build the biggest house that we can afford, and we can afford a lot because interest rates are like 2%.
Yeah.
And then 2023 and 24 came along, and interest rates went to like 7-8%, and then nobody was buying houses, and then the trend there was apartment buildings because nobody could afford anything.
Yeah.
um, and so now we're in 2025, interest rates are coming down, and it's starting to feel more like the pre-COVID market again. we're
Mm.
kind of we're kind of starting to regulate and starting to settle down. Houses are being built smaller than what we saw during COVID. um, and yeah, it's probably a bit more of a regular market that we're seeing right now, but you definitely have to uh, keep your pulse on the market.
Yeah.
listen to what other developers are saying. Podcasts like what you have are great, to try to hear what other people are saying and see how that reflects in your current market that you're operating in.
Awesome. Well, Alan, I've got one last question. If you could snap your fingers and instantly solve one recurring challenge in your role, what would that be and why?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the typical developer answer, and it's probably super cliche, but in order to get more affordable housing, we need less government involvement. I think that the government sees that there's a problem in housing supply, and so their solution is to try to get more involved. And the more that they get involved, the more regulations and more checks are getting done, which then just adds years to the timeline of getting houses to the market. So I'm very much in favor of governments providing zoning. Make a zoning requirement, but then if we check the boxes to those zoning requirements, let us proceed with our project.
Right.
If these things didn't have to go to public hearings and become a political debate, even though you've checked all the boxes, that would do a lot to making housing get to the market faster and thus make it more affordable. So yeah, the answer is less government involvement.
Oh, that's great because it goes beyond just you guys, right? Think about all the lives they touch every year of delay. It's not just you as a business. It's all the employees that are at risk that you employ. It's all the vendors you work with that are now at risk. It's all the homes that aren't in the market that people could be living in, and your market could be growing and moving on to new projects. Like it's pretty wild. Well, Alan,
Yeah, totally.
thanks so much for joining me on the Pre-Con Recon podcast, brought to you by Him and Her.
Yeah, it's been great. Appreciate it.